Okay, all members of the committee are present. May I have a motion to accept the minutes from our previous meeting? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing and seeing none. We will take time on what we have previously, and we'll move into our new legislation. What is this? Yeah, it isn't coming. Number 15, under public service, is a resolution declaring it necessary to improve certain streets in the city between certain termini by providing street cleaning services, street lighting, and declaring an emergency. Hey, John Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is our annual street cleaning ordinance. There's no change in the rate for this year, and we would ask for suspension of the rules.
Okay. There are no change in the rates this year. This will be publicized.
Yes.
And is it possible when we publicize to have in some form something that says if you are not receiving these services, you do not get charged? Because so many residents will read this and will see that maybe they don't have street lights, but because they see street lights in this sentence here, they think they're getting charged for something that we don't have. And I don't know about my other colleagues, but I often get calls on this about the questioning of, you know, we don't get this service, so are we getting charged?
I will incur the law department.
Okay, thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it. Are there any comments from the committee? Hearing and seeing none, are there any comments from the other members of council that are in chambers? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion for suspension of the rules? There is a motion. Is there a second? And there's a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the agenda as suspension of the rules. Thank you. Okay, number 16 under public service. Resolution declaring it necessary to improve various off-street parking facilities in the Kenmore Business District and the Canton Road Business District by sealing, resurfacing, and repairing, painting parking space stripes, sweeping, removing snow, cleaning sewer openings, providing lawn, turf, shrub, and tree maintenance, litter, and other general cleanup, and otherwise improving and maintaining the same, and all when and where necessary, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is the squaring up from last year's costs on these projects or on these services that we provided. These are the actual costs divided amongst the property owners.
So as a matter of procedure, we give them an estimate a year in advance, we do the work, and then a year later we actually charge. Would that be correct?
That's correct, the actual cost.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of council that are in the chambers? Councilman Neal.
Thank you, Councilwoman. In something that was mentioned when sealing was brought up in this, just wanted to ask in regards to the question that was asked a couple meetings back about sealing, and it's this was in regards to parking lot when we were talking about the streets and any potential cost savings. If we could still get whatever information is available on that, please, just to see if it would be to our advantage to implement sealing the streets after we pave them. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, what is your preference?
Consent would be fine.
Motion. I have a motion for consent. Do I have a second? I have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 17, ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee without publicly advertising for bids to enter into a contract or contracts with Core and Main LP for the purchase of 4 tapping machines and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we have 4 of these machines that tap our mains when we install new services. They're all these machines are like over 20 years old, and they are in need of repair quite frequently. This would allow us to purchase 4 new machines, 1 for each crew, and then 1 for our large mains that we tap.
Okay. It sounds like a need.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from members of council on the committee? Any questions from members of council that are in the chambers? Seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Okay. Motion for consent? Okay. I got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed in the consent agenda. Number 18, ordinance amending, supplementing Title 5, Chapter 50 Sewers, Section 50.81, discharge criteria for fats, oils, and grease of the codified ordinances of the City of Akron by enhancing the Service Director's authority to protect the city's sewer system and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, back in 2012, council passed the ordinance regarding fats, oils, and grease. This would make a minor change to that ordinance to bring it into conformance with the state code. Is there something going on we should know about?
Yeah, can we, do you mind Travis closing that door? Thank you. It was hard to hear. Would you mind saying that, not all the way back from the very beginning, but...
No, council passed this ordinance before you in 2012. There's a minor change that we're adding, that they provide information. This puts us in conformance with the state code regarding fats, oils, and grease.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, I want to comment before I open it up to the committee. I really appreciate, I believe it's Mary Ann, who sends me the notices that are going on.
Maria
That are going
Wilson.
on in my ward. And I do my best to follow those up, because a lot of those places I frequent, and they are not attaining to what the rules are. And I think it's important as council people that we are aware of those in our ward that are not maintaining the procedures and the policies that we've set in place. And can you tell me if there is a fine that's eventually involved? So far, no one that I've been tracking has gotten fined.
We find that it's generally something that they just need a little bit of education on,
Okay.
and that we can cure the problem without going to the fine part of it. And Maria Wilson was the Employee of the Month last month, the one that sends you all the letters.
Like that
She's
girl.
fabulous.
Well, I can't tell you how, I always thank her, because I think the more we know, and also then when I don't see it on a place or see that they have met whatever, then I can say, gosh, thank you for adhering. So it sounds like you're being proactive and trying to work with them to
Absolutely.
make it great. Thank you very much. Anyone from the committee have a comment? Anyone from council and the chambers that are members of council? No? Okay. What
Consent.
is your pleasure? Consent?
Consent would be fine.
Okay, do I have a motion for consent? I have a motion and a second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing and seeing none. We'll go on to number 19, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement and/or legislation with the Ohio Director of Transportation to certain improvements on West Market Street and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Yes, Madam Chair, this would be pavement from Revere Road to Hawkins Avenue and Portage Path to State Route 59. This would occur next year, but this is to enter into the agreement with ODOT in order to get that funding. It's an 80-20 funding, and consent would be fine.
And I noted that ODOT is carrying the largest burden of this, and so hopefully this gives me something I can tell my residents when they call and talk about West Market Street, Mr. Hall, that I can tell them that it is, we have done the necessary preparations to have this done.
And this year, we will get Westgate to Portage, so that section will get done this year. Then we'll follow up with this next spring, and then the following year, we're going to get the section from Hillbish to Market, or Hillbish to Canton Road.
Okay. Will once again ODOT be paying the lion's share
Yes.
of this because of the state route?
It's a state route.
Okay. All right.
We're probably going to end up doing some strip patching in the area that Mrs. Mobian brings up by Resnick School to try and get that to last another year.
I hear a lot about that, so I'm glad that it's entered your ears and is in the works. Appreciate that. Any comments from the committee? Any comments from members of council in the chambers? Hearing and seeing none, consent. In fact, I would like to make that motion for consent. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 20, ordinance authorizing the mayor to file an application, enter into an agreement with the Ohio Water Development Authority for a loan for the water supply revolving loan account to provide funding for 11 projects of the Water Supply Bureau and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you remember last week, we came in with a, what do they call that thing? Help me here.
With the hot dog. Because last week was Memorial
Put the chemicals in up at the dam rather than
Oh, yes, yeah.
raw water treatment facility. Last week, council passed the ordinance for that facility. These loans are for things like that. This is the projects that we have scheduled for this year. There's 11 of them, that being one of them, and this will allow us to get the loan funds that we need in order to complete those projects.
And knowing the work that our water facility does. I
Raw
think
water
that
treatment.
we're all, and we want to keep our quality exactly where it is. So I looked over them and I was very pleased with the little bit of knowledge I have of what's needed there. So is there any comments from members of the committee? Any comments from members of council? Councilwoman Amobian.
Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I see here that's itemized, the 9.7 mil.
Yes.
This is what we are going to borrow?
These will be projects that about half of them will be started this year and then half of them next year.
And we're borrowing this money from the, what, state?
Yes.
And the percentage of the,
We're in June, it's 1.66%. So depending on what time we actually take the loan, that rate will be established then.
okay. But it's pretty low. The interest
sorry?
The interest rate is pretty low.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing and seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
I have a motion for consent. I'll make the, oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So on the, what is the caustic soda day tank?
That's just an upgrade to our existing treatment facilities.
It's just called soda?
Caustic soda is what we use for pH adjustment.
That's for that? Okay.
Caustic soda, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to make a motion for the consent agenda. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none. Is there anything else to come before the committee? No? No? Okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
It's all yours, baby. It's all you. Nobody wants any controversy. They don't want to be chairman. Used to be in my committee, but it's not. Here, Donnie.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward and call the public safety meeting to order, please. All members are present. We did hold a meeting 2 weeks ago before the Memorial Day holiday. Can I get approval of those minutes, please? All in favor? Aye. All right, we have one new piece in front of us that's offered by the mayor. Resolution declaring, 2019 declaring that the city of Akron adopts and agrees to participate in the multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan developed in conjunction with the County of Summit Emergency Management Agency and declaring emergency. And today we have our Deputy Mayor of Public Safety, Charlie Brown, with us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This resolution allows the city of Akron to receive hazard mitigation grant program funds and also be eligible to receive emergency funds through the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. To my left is District Chief O'Neill, I'm sorry. He can answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything to add before I open it up for questions?
Yeah, I'll just say, this is a no-cost item, but to be eligible for funding, like Deputy Mayor said, we have to be part of this package that goes into Summit County EMA.
Yeah, pull that a little closer.
Sorry.
Thanks, Chief.
And it's done every 5 years, so we did this in 2014, and it's due for renewal.
Okay.
Basically, looks just like the one we did last time, pretty much. It's part of a bigger package that all 31 agencies in the county submit with the county to the state, so we can get funding.
Okay, sounds good. All right, any questions? Committee members first. No one. Council members in chambers? No one. Oh. Do we have anyone? All right, Councilwoman Omobian. All right, let's go.
Give me an example what this is. I'm trying to read it real quickly.
Okay, so as part of the hazard mitigation plan, we submit projects. Typically, for Akron, they deal with flooding or flood control that are part of the hazard mitigation plan. So if we have a disaster in the city of Akron that affects any part of what those projects are involved in, then we're eligible for funding or reimbursement from the government to recover from that.
And the reason we multi-jurisdictionally is will they come in and help if you need some additional help? Or?
Correct. It's all part of the Stafford Act because the way things work, the chain works. It starts at the county EMA, works its way to the state EMA, and then up to FEMA if it goes that far. So it's just a hierarchy of how things work with the Stafford Act.
Okay. Just since we're on this subject, I was reading the paper yesterday, and I was just curious, when you have disasters, they were talking about a siren. That's not the state of what the art is now that people are using to notify people when there's an emergency, like a tornado or something. We don't do that anymore, or is that not your area?
Well, I can speak on a little. I can tell you that in my career, we've never had that in the city of Akron. But in today's technological age, it's not effective. One thing, the way the city's laid out, the topography of the city doesn't allow sound to travel that well, so the sirens aren't effective or proven to be effective. But with cell phones and social media and the news and reverse 911, that's what we really need to focus on, is getting our citizens signed up for reverse 911. So when there is an emergency, they can get the alerts on their phone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Excuse me, any other questions, comments? Councilwoman Swirsky.
Is data collected by the, through the right to know ordinance useful for this? Is that part of the inventory that informs the planning on this or not?
Right to know is not a part of this piece at all.
Okay.
This all has to do with larger projects, construction projects. It's not hazmat related at all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? No? What's your pleasure?
Consent, please.
Consent? All
Thank
right.
you.
Can I get a motion for consent? Motion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right. We'll put that on the consent agenda. Thank you. We're adjourned.
So why are they endorsing? Why do it? Why waste it? Why ask people to attend a meeting when you vote for both?
What's going on with Parks and Rec? He doesn't have any, you call it a meeting or something? Well, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Let me ask the girls.
Yeah. Right. Ahead of time. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Oh, you mean, no, I mean residents do, right? Yeah. They've never come to me. The only thing they want is my money. They want me to show up at fundraisers. Yeah, and even see this debate about the primary, where these guys brought in this, nonpartisan alternative, that, to me, should have been, that's the dividing line. That's the dividing line. You can maybe disagree on some issues, even you're a Democrat, but yeah, to me, that should have been, we're gonna take our money and we're gonna work for your opponent. Yeah, you left the party. You left the party. I mean, the party is a big umbrella, right? Yeah.
Well, I just think
But they didn't. Somehow they didn't use that. Yeah. That must have been frustrating for you. Yeah. Well, there was like, every election is, but yours maybe particular. It was more complicated too. Yeah. When you run three people, it's. Yeah. Well, you know, Mayor, I mean, I do too, especially when you get in that mode, and then people always disappoint. Every campaign, they always disappoint. Yeah. People say they're going to do stuff, they don't do it. They do it half-assed. Yeah.
I tend to trust him.
Yeah.
These are all lessons for
Well, you hadn't run citywide before.
It was my first time.
Yeah. And you did, like you pointed out, you did amazingly well. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You should be proud of it. I almost got it. You know, coming from one ward. Yeah. But I do know, and I would get, as an organizer too, as a professional organizer, near the end I was getting burnt out because I was like, I don't trust people because they never do what they say they're going to do. An organizer has to trust people, and so does a candidate. But well, guess what happens?
Oh, I know.
Women, and women are like that a little bit too. My wife is like that. Mothers. Yeah, and you like, I tell my wife, well, I tell her like, oh, we'll do it, don't worry, the kids and I will do it. But, and there's other issues too, and then, but sometimes it carries over then like, because nobody cares about them.
It seems to be, I would say 90% of the time.
It's almost chemical in you. We're men, you know, Bobby's very good, I assume, he's a very good father. But men are maybe a little bit removed. I mean, I consider myself very good, but I don't think that, I never thought of things as quickly as my wife did related to the kids.
Well, we will react.
Yeah.
I see them always.
Oh, he's more laid back. He'll sit. Well, there's a good balance sometimes that way. Yeah, to steady you, like, well, no, you don't have to do it. But I've been with men. Our kids were playing in the edge of the ocean, you know, and they start walking in the ocean. They're going to drown in a minute, and the men are all sitting around talking about sport. And then somebody from the beach, one of the mothers said, "Hey, fellas, your kids are." Yeah, women are a little more in touch. They're a little more in touch. Well, yeah. Yeah. Very well.